you ever felt lost in an Excel spreadsheet? Well, today we're going to take a tour and find out what all the bits and pieces are about. Now, if you hang around to the end, there's a very special feature that's going to save you a bit of time creating formulas. So let's dive in, shall we? All right, so you've just opened up a blank new spreadsheet. And whilst there's a lot of empty space in the middle here, some of the things that you can see up here and some down below might be a little bit confusing for you. So let's take a quick tour around and we'll see if we can make a bit of sense of it all. Now, you'll notice down here in the main part of the spreadsheet, we have the columns, which are all lettered, and the rows, which are all numbered. And there in the middle, we have a cell that is the place where you put your information into. Now you'll notice as I move around inside the spreadsheet, get a little highlight of the column and the row number. And over here, we can also see that we are in cell F8. So it's a grid where we can determine where we are within the grid by what column, letter, and row number we are. So that is probably a prime consideration concept to keep in mind when you are starting to first explore Excel. So these grids are broken into individual cells which you can identify or address by the column letter and the row number. Now, up above the spreadsheet cells, we have the menus, which are going to take you to different pages of the ribbon beneath. Now, this is the same for all Microsoft programs, but what changes is some of the specifics for that particular program. So, for example, here in Excel, formulas and data are very prominent for what we are using Excel for is the manipulation of numbers, calculations to show a result in the story. Now, up above the menus, we have the little icon that tells us we're in Excel. We also have the auto save option, which will go on if we save a file inside our OneDrive or other cloud-based area of OneDrive. Then we have the save button shortcut, and everyone's friend is the undo button, which will undo the last thing that we just did, and also its counterpart redo. Here's one that or two that I've added up above here, which are the snapshot or camera and the shapes, which I use quite often. So this area is known as the quick access toolbar, and it is something you can customize as I have done just here. So that's something we could probably approach in another session, but basically most every single shortcut you can see here in the ribbon and on every tab you can include up here. Now, of course, it could get pretty crowded, so you might want to reserve that for just the main ones that you use quite often. As I said here, particularly the shapes, I use that quite a bit, various other bits and pieces. And of course, I could add a lot more to that, but with some other shortcuts, you can get there quite quickly. Now, next door to that is the name of this current workbook, which currently has the default name of Book 1. It's not until you save the file that you get the opportunity to name it something else. I would not recommend continuing to name it Book 1. And of course, what program we're using, which is Excel. Then we have a search bar, which allows you to just search within Excel to find out something. So a command that you don't know about, a formula, help, things of that nature, you can find through search. Or you'll notice when you hover over many things, you'll have Alt and something or another keyboard combination. Those shortcuts allow you to get to that spot with just using the keyboard, which might be handy to increase your speed and productivity. Okay, so looking at the commands that we see here, or the tab names, simply clicking on these will reveal a whole range of new particular commands. And as I keep clicking, you can see that that changes quite dramatically from tab to tab. Now, if I come back home, the home contains most of the frequently used stuff as well. So things like the clipboard command, so things around cut, copy, paste, and so on. Now, all of these commands are created in a group. You can see here is the name for this group, clipboard. And wherever you see a little arrow down the bottom right-hand edge, like so, that will open up a dialog box so that you can get access to all the commands. So, for example, here, font commands are all about changing the size and shape of the text and numbers that you see in the spreadsheet. Alignment is about how the cells alignments are left, middle, or right aligned. So the text that's within the cells or the numbers within the cells. But by default, text will align to the left, numbers to the right. Now, the reason numbers go to the right is so that they align along a decimal point or a number of decimals or no decimals. So very much how you would expect them to appear. The text on the left by default, but that can be changed by using any of these commands. And we'll get into this in another session. Then we have the number and styles and cells, and I think you get the point. All of these grouped areas will take you to, or will address, a common need of commands. Underneath, we have the name box. Now, the name box is pretty cool. Lots and lots of things can be done with the name box. But primarily, and on the very surface, you can see how it reads A1 at the moment. If I click somewhere else, it will show you whatever cell this cell pointer is now currently in. And what the cell pointer will do is be the place where you will be starting to enter some data. For example, I'll click here. I'm in E3. I enter something, such as the word something, and that now appears in that cell E3 because that's where the cell pointer was. Now, just across from there, if we start to type something, this area jumps to life, and that allows us to cancel or enter with the mouse the entry that we've started, and you can see that is displayed over here. This FX is all about formulas, and if we drop that down when we're in the midst of typing a formula entry to start with, that will show us some formula assistance. So like so, inserting a function, but here we were just talking about entering some text. And this long area is known as the address bar, or the formula bar, I should say, because the formula bar will show you what's actually inside a cell. So for example, if I click here and I'll start typing some formula, so equals 1 plus 1, that equals 2, but what I've actually entered in the cell is not 2, but that formula. So what we see in the cell versus what's actually entered in the cell. So the formula bar will tell you exactly what is within the formula, within the cell. So carrying on, we can see that the column and row headings, as I mentioned earlier, will display a little subtle hint as to what cell the cell pointer is in, but they can also perform other functions, such as you can select a column heading or headings by dragging across them. Same with the rows, and that allows you to do bulk actions across those columns and rows. So that could be inserting or deleting or something of that nature. One that I will get you to note, but be wary of, and that is this intersection point here between the columns and the rows of A1. It's now selected every single cell in the spreadsheet by clicking that corner of the spreadsheet itself. A couple of reasons we might want to do that becomes apparent a bit later on as you get a bit more skilled with it, but by selecting everything in this, every single cell in the spreadsheet, if you delete here, you've deleted everything. And if you've moved on and saved and closed and so on, you can potentially lose some data. So that's why it's a bit hairy, that one. It selects the entire spreadsheet. Okay, now down the side, we've got our two scroll bars that allow us to scroll up and down and across left and right with our spreadsheet. You can continue to move across like so. Now, I'll get you to note that, of course, these letters do run out. 26 letters in the Western English alphabet. We end in Z or Z, but then the pattern of A, B, A, C, and so on continues, and that goes all the way to the edge of the spreadsheet, which is, I'll just use a little technique here, XFD. So that's quite a lot of columns. So the cells in terms of rows, we go down to the bottom of that, is 1,048,576 rows. So that is a very big spreadsheet. And that brings me to a point here that we have only one sheet currently that we're working with. And by default, they're called sheet 1, sheet 2, and so on. Clicking this plus here will open a new sheet. And now we have two huge sheets open, and one has a little bit of data on it. One is completely blank because it's brand new. And as we continue to click that plus, you can see the sheets get added to our workbook. Now, across from here, you can see these little three vertical dots here. That allows you to drag the size of the bottom scroll bar across, because if you have a number of sheets that keep adding across the bottom here, you might want to give yourself a bit of room to just see the sheets to click on them. So that's what that's about. Now, down the bottom, you can see we have the what's known as the status bar, which gives us the status of quite a few things of our spreadsheet. Now, for one, we have what is the actual status mode that we are in. In ready mode means that we're ready to type something into this spreadsheet. So if I click, Keep an eye down here. Ready will change as I start to type a number to the enter mode, which I hit enter key on the keyboard, and now we're back to ready mode. Now if I double click on that cell, that puts us into edit mode, and I can make the change here on the formula bar or actually in the cell if I got that number incorrect. So I changed it to 25. I'll add something else underneath. You can see as I hit enter, it moves down. If I was wanting to type something across, hitting the tab key on the keyboard will move you across, enter and move, much the same as the enter key does on its own. Enter and move down. Okay, so that's a nice little feature to keep an eye on because that has other functions as well as we go forward. This indicates the status of the macros if we are recording one at the moment or if there's anything running. The macros are basically little programs you can create within your spreadsheets. So a bit of an advanced topic, but it's there because it needs to signal if there is a macro being recorded. Okay, I've got something to investigate if I want to make this spreadsheet fully accessible to people with potentially any issues with legibility and so on. So that's a new feature to keep in mind. Now across the bottom, again over here we see that we're in normal view, which we can also change to page layout view. It will show you what appears on each page as you're printing. And then also if you've got some page breaks, you can see where they fit. And finally across the bottom here, we've got the zoom, which allows you to zoom in and out so you can see a bit more or a bit less of your spreadsheet. And if I zoom right in, you get an idea of how big this could actually be. Okay, so you can see up the top here, that's where we just started entering some stuff. So we're going to come back and see that a bit more legibly. All right. Now, there is some other features of the status bar. We can see underneath here currently is blank. If I highlight some numbers, automatically we can get some calculations done just to have a quick reference if you like. So we've got an average, count, min, max, and sum, and that's just simply by highlighting. So click on one and nothing happens. But if we highlight, we get some action. Now, to change that, if we right click, that's where those have been added. So min, max, sum, and so on. And you can also indicate other things such as if caps lock's on or num lock's on. And you can see currently num lock's on. I'll put caps lock on and that appears there right next to that. So some useful stuff you can employ down there on the bottom of status bar. Okay, so that's a quick little tour around the spreadsheet. More to come, and I hope you find that very useful and can put some stuff to practice straight away.